Welcome to Windows on the World. Now, the revelations in the Mail on Sunday and the Daily Mail from data science, climate and satellites consultant John J. Bates, an insider, that NOAA, N-O-A-A, manipulated data to show false warming, are the death knell of the man-made climate change hoax. And this has massive implications. I've got a quote here, and we're going to talk to the man who made the quote in a couple of seconds. There is no scientific basis whatsoever for the claim that mankind's CO2 has any effect on climate. The fact is that CO2 levels are an effect of changes in climate and not a cause. That man is Piers Corbyn. Welcome to Windows on the World.
Well, welcome. Yes, it's very good to be here again. And if people want to know the full details of that statement, they can go to weatheraction.com. But I think, well, firstly point out that these latest revelations confirm what we, Weather Action, and a lot of scientists and climate realists and climate skeptic organisations have been saying for years. The warming that we are told about is 100% fake. President Trump, whatever you might think about various things he said or done, or allegedly said or done, is also 100% right to announce his intentions to defund the fraudulent Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is the subcommittee of the United Nations, and also to terminate American support for the nonsense of the Paris Accords, which are, of course, a globalist deindustrialization corporate plunder agenda.
A lot of people, though, are still not aware of the importance of the IPCC in all this, especially people who have been, well, I would say, taken in by this to a degree that it's a religion. And a lot of people also aren't aware that it was indeed propagated as a religion from the 1970s, and the IPCC works on what is called consensus. It's not really science. It's not really a scientific body, is it? And this is the problem that we have with a lot of the comments and people who try and debunk what we're talking about. They say, well, 97% of scientists agree. Can you deal with that for the 100th time, Piers?
Yeah. The claim that 97% of scientists agree with it is totally false. An actual survey of the so-called reports that this was the case showed that at most it's 3%. The other 94% are just scientists that have written something or other about climate change, collected the money, and they put the word climate change in the headline. So therefore they're stated as being believers in the man-made effect when they are not, and they've no evidence for it. I think the basic point about it all is that it is politically driven, and it is a massive ideological tool by the globalists who are under massive attack now. It's an ideological tool to justify their deindustrializing agenda, making super profits for the biggest corporations and more money for the super rich. And the ideology is used to sweep in, young, starry-eyed people that want to save the planet, want to do good things, and they believe that somehow, by following anything with the climate change flag on it, that they're doing good. But actually, they're working for Soros and the richest people in the world that have an agenda of enslavement of the third world and deindustrializing the Britain, America and Europe.
A lot of people aren't aware that this really came from Club of Rome documents in the early 70s, that it was going to be manufactured and it was really going to be promoted as a religion, which it has been. So if the IPCC can be excommunicated from this religion, does that mean the teeth would be taken out of the whole agenda? That's the important issue, I think, at the moment.
It does, yes. Now, there will be various people who carry on believing it, because these ideologies have a logic of their own. But you see, the funding of these hundreds of little groups by Soros and others will maybe carry on. But you see, they won't have the backing of IPCC. There won't be these international rallies, these junkets and so on. So I think generally belief will cut down, and what we've got to do at this point in time is get right in there. We've got to split the movement into true green and fake green, where, you know, we defend biodiversity, but we oppose things like the building of dams in Brazil, which are just to so-called save the planet, but actually to make money for the super corporations, and in the process destroying tribal life there, which is totally wrong.
So you also stated that President Trump is 100% right to announce intentions to defund this fraudulent operation and to terminate US support for the delusional, globalist, deindustrializing corporate plunder of the Paris 2016 Accords. So can you go into that? Because you have been accused of being a Trump supporter. Now, this is where it's getting interesting, isn't it? Because the Trump issue, global warming, and a lot of this consensus reality, it seems to be splitting things into two camps. And we're starting to see that there's people from this other camp that's been formed that are basically going on with sloganeering, who are very viciously attacking anything and everything coming out of people who may support something that Trump has said.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think that's very important. Yeah. You see, what we have is the globalization agenda of the super rich, the biggest corporations, is now actually fighting for its life because it's failed in Europe, and now Mr. Trump has popped up saying, look, we ain't going to do this in America. We're going to stop this deindustrialization, somehow defend our economy itself. And there's all sorts of arguments about that, but I think it can actually work, because when you do that, you actually avoid the social cost of the deprivation which goes with the deindustrialization. And of course, that doesn't appear on the cost side for the supranationals who are just enslaving people in the third world instead of in the first world. So, you know, it can work, and it is definitely a way forward against the super rich. But as you say, somehow people that call themselves left and progressive have been dragged into this thing to defend the globalization agenda. And the key ideological trick which is used is man-made climate change. And you can see in their emails, they say, look, we've got to save the planet, go and attack Trump. And when they go on and attacking Trump, they might be claiming he's racist or whatever as another issue, but in their minds they're brought along there on the climate change religion. So we have to smash it, and we've got to get through to politicians that, look, it is a lie, it's going to fail, the wind farms will collapse, you're going to have to impose more and more charges to pay for this nonsense on people. The best thing to do now is cut your losses, cut the crap, get the hell out of it, and reduce everybody's electricity charges by 1/3. And the first political party to do this anywhere is going to win. It's going to win. And in academia, again, the academics all over the world are locked into this globalist nonsense, right? But if one major university says we're going to drop it, we're going to fight for actual scientific truth, then they'll have thousands of students going there, you know, and they could take a lead. So, you know, the boat is sinking, and politicians and academics have got to think, are we going to sink with it or join the truth?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And of course, the funding behind this and all of the other things we've been covering recently, like the Women's March and a lot of these opposition groups, false opposition groups set up by George Soros. And of course, he's really backing this as well, isn't he?
Absolutely. George Soros is spending millions on mobilising people. He's also funding a lot of non-NGOs, so-called non-governmental organisations, which the Hungarian government have suddenly said, well, hang on, who are these people? They're not just free, independent, advisors. They have an agenda, and they should be accountable just like anybody in government. They're not non-government. They're, well, they basically manipulate government organisations.
Yeah, all these things tie
should
into
be
the
called
climate.
NGOs.
Yes, they tie in to this global warming climate change agenda. All of these opposition groups seem to. You seem to see that it was at the Women's March, it was against climate change.
Oh, yeah.
The same funded groups are always there, and it's the soundbite politics that we have to get past. And this group seems to have fallen for these soundbites that they are just parading out. And of course, there's no argument against anything we say, just insults. All as we're getting is personal insults if we appear to be on the side of anything that Trump might have said in the past or before, in the future. So what we've got now is this very false reality. And of course, that's great for the globalists, isn't it? That false reality, because nothing ever gets properly talked about. So you've also said that all anti-CO2 measures worldwide, such as the UK Climate Change Act 2008, which has a devastating impact really on people's lives, even though they may not realise it until they add up where it's all going, where it's come from, that similar measures in other countries as well must now be repealed.
That's right.
Can you see that happening?
Well, yes. Once we build a movement, and people are going to have to join in to convince politicians. But see, in the end, people are going to follow their bread and butter. When they realise they can have a third off their electricity bills by supporting truth, they're going to go for it, and politicians will tell them to do it. And then a lot of politicians will deny they ever believed in man-made climate change and so forth. But the other thing, of course, they'll do is end the deindustrialisation of the United Kingdom. So, I mean, these things can come together and increase actual prosperity. At the same time, of course, the media are going to carry on relentless attacks. And I noticed that they attacked Trump for all sorts of things in the past, but they do not report good things he's done, such as ending the various trade deals around the world, which of course is supported by a lot of left people of all sorts. Yet they act as if that never happened and just attack him on a very, very narrow front of things he's meant to have done in the past, when I think all politicians, you shouldn't deal with what they said, but the important thing is what they do. So we have to list things that Trump has done. And you have to admit that him bringing more jobs into America and ending those trade deals and taking steps to destroy the lies in man-made climate change story are good. And those things ought to be welcomed. You can have criticisms of Trump, of course, on other things, whatever. And I don't want people to close down their minds either way at all. But I would urge anyone watching just to think, look, okay, you've got criticism of Trump, you've got criticism of Clinton. Anything you hear in the media, ask yourself, is it true? And when you realise some of it is not true, ask yourself, why am I being told this? And then decide what to do.
Well, it's like the hockey stick graph has now been written out of history in a lot of people's minds, but that was incredibly important. And that was such a scandal, the ClimateGate scandal from East Anglia University. And when that came out, it was a shocking revelation. But that seems to have been buried. These people are very good at burying this stuff, aren't they? Because they've got control of the mainstream.
They have the lies, they bury the lies and come up with new lies. But now they're in a serious, difficult situation because insiders are saying it's a pack of lies. And you go on weatheraction.com or Steve Goddard, Twitter, and you can see spelled out how the distortions are made. And the authorities admit it. They say, oh yeah, but we've had a new set of parameters which justify it. Of course, there's no actual justification at all. But we've got to up the ante, so I'd urge people to come on weatheraction.com, see events we're going to, because I'm going to be going along to events, saying to scientists there, or pretend scientists, whatever they are, to say, look, you know, we know, there's no evidence for this stuff. It's time to drop it and stand for scientific truth And actually, that means we have to be against the globalisation project. But, you know, that follows. But the key thing is we're going to go to these meetings and say we've got to get rid of lies in science.
A lot of people probably would think that we go on about this a lot. Obviously, this is your area of expertise, but the reason I bring this into the show a lot is it's behind so much of the fraud of what's going on and the deception and the bringing in of draconian policies which are killing the world's population and impoverishing people. We're basically being taken into a tramp economy, and the way this has been implemented is fairly clever, but it's just basic psychological subversion against the public, and that's what we need to get over to people, that there is an agenda behind this which is not in their interest, and it's not based on any reality. And with the constant trickle of information coming out, you seem to think now that this is a defining moment. Is that what you're saying?
It is. This is a defining moment because Trump has raised the temperature, and we're physically going to get rid of the IPCC con machine, right? And that is forcing MPs to think. I mean, I was in Parliament building yesterday and talked to some of them, and they're all perked up. They're thinking about it, you know. And when I tell them, look, you can reduce electricity bills by a third just by standing for scientific truth, they think, oh, that's interesting, you know. So, I mean, it could happen, but they're all being held back by all sorts of interest groups. But we've just got to get in there. It's a question of accountability. And whatever you say about Trump, in some sense, he does stand for, you know, better accountability, because the media have been complaining, or more or less complaining, sort of, oh dear, he's carrying out what he said he was going to do, which they said is unusual, or in fact it hasn't been done before. No, certainly not at the rate he has been doing things. So, I mean, there'll be some things he'll do I'm sure I won't agree with at all. But, you know, on this issue of climate change, on the issue of defending jobs in America, and on the issue of destroying those bad trade deals, I mean, that has to be supported.
That's very good, Piers, but I'm going to close with your opening statement that there is no scientific basis whatsoever for the claim that mankind's CO2 has any effect on the climate. The fact is that CO2 levels are an effect of changes in climate, not a cause. So if anybody, including Brian Cox, wants to debate us on that, we are here. We haven't heard from Brian Cox or many other people, actually, who have come down on us quite heavily in the comments section. So if anybody wants to come on the show and dispute anything that we're saying, not just about this, but about anything else, please get in touch and keep watching those, watching us, watching Windows on the World, and we'll see you soon.